Welcome to the Lindsay and Tony podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs. Hello and welcome to episode 26, The Healing Power of Children. In this episode, Tony and I talked all about the benefits of really listening to children because they have a little psychic sense that they totally tune into and they don't censor themselves. We talk about the benefits of listening to them and paying attention to what they're drawn to and reminding ourselves to really pay attention to our inner child too. We cannot wait for you to listen to the episode. Enjoy the show. Hi guys, welcome back. We're so excited that you're here today. We are talking about the power of children and how they can heal us in our lives if we pay attention to their messages.
Yes, and I was with my two nephews today, pretty much all day, and then last night as well, and we just played sports most of the day today, and we played like kids, and I felt like a big kid when I was with them because that's all they want to do is like play, and they just follow their instinct, like, okay, I want to play soccer now. And then of course Chase, when we were playing basketball, he kept on asking to play soccer the whole time, and then when we were playing soccer he was wanting to do something else, but he's still following his instinct, and they'll keep you going all day long pretty much.
I know, and sometimes you don't want to hear what they have to say. If it's like constant, you're like, why are you saying this over and over again? But as we're creating this episode, there was just a rainbow that came up outside before we officially started this episode, and the rainbow's outside, and it's so beautiful. I wish you guys could see it. But I want to read a quote by Walt Disney because I felt like this went with our episode today. So, too many people grow up. That's the real trouble with the world. Too many people grow up. They forget. They don't remember what it's like to be 12 years old. They patronize. They treat children as inferiors. Well, I won't do that. And I think that's such an important quote because it's so easy to kind of push kids to the side and say, go play, and not listen to what they have to say. And the kids are actually really powerful teachers to us. They are the closest to the veil. They're the closest to the other side. So they don't have many censors, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and life's a paradox because you think that older people or like have more wisdom when in all reality we should really listen to the kids more than we listen to anybody. Like when a kid talks in front of me, I'm paying attention to what they're saying because they're so in tune. Most of them are so in tune that they just follow their instincts. So a lot of times what they say to you, they're channeling it, and it's something that you really need to hear. And a lot of times they're giving you answers to your problems that you've been having the last week or last couple of months.
Yeah, they're like little mini readers. So pay attention to the kids. You will find huge value in them. Both of us worked in the public school systems, so we've been around kids like 24/7 practically. And there are times where kids can be, it could be tough dealing with children, but at the same time, if you look at it in a different way, I feel like they add so much humor to life and so many beautiful moments that come up for them. If we can share that with them, it could be really powerful, and they'll remember that. They actually, I remember things from when I was a child better than I would remember things from last year. It sticks with me.
Yeah, and a lot of the students, like you said earlier when we were talking, a lot of the students that you had that were, misbehaved and were the students that always got in trouble because they couldn't follow the school system. You were talking how a lot of them are actually the ones that would channel intuitive messages to you when you first started teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I was in school and I was teaching, one of my students, we'll call him Tommy, he was very talkative and he was, drawing pictures when he was supposed to be doing something else, but he was one of my students. I absolutely love him. He was so intuitive, it was crazy. It was like the ones that can't sit still are very in tune, and they don't want to conform to what our society has them do in the school system. So it's really a different way of learning, and the kids get labeled, as ADHD or ADD, all these names, but their brains, they're coming in with their brains being rewired in a totally different way. I've found over the years the kids are getting even more sensitive. So when they come into us, they're like little rainbow kids. They're highly intuitive, highly empathic, so they take on other people's energy. Each year I feel like they're becoming more sensitive and more attuned to that spirit realm.
Yeah, for example, so in particular that Tommy kid, or that's what we'll call him,
Yeah.
he drew you a specific picture of, you want to share that story?
Yeah. So when it was my second day of teaching the third grade when Nick died, and my principal came into the classroom that next day, because I wasn't there for school, and she shared with the kids that he had passed. They knew that he had passed away. So when I came back to school 10 days later, my kids were very sensitive to how I was feeling. Like they say, shh, they would whisper. I'd hear them talk about Miss Marino, like, is she okay? Or, they would do different things. They were a very sensitive group.
And these were third graders, right?
Graders.
About 10 years old?
8 years.
8 years old.
They were 8 years old at the start of the year, and then some of them were 9 when they came in. So what ended up happening is this little boy, Tommy, was drawing me a picture, and he wrote a story. And in the picture was a picture of Hawaii. And he said, Miss Marino and Nicholas are in Hawaii, and he's making banana pancakes. Now, I never shared anything with them that he used to know that I loved banana pancakes. I didn't share with the kids that we wanted to go to Hawaii, that we had planned on doing that. But he was so tapped in, and Nick was coming through him with different things that he was doing. So I paid attention to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
what were you going to say?
Well, I had another student, we'll call her Sarah.
Mhm.
One time she raised her hand, and she was a daydreamer. She was always daydreaming. Very hard to keep her on task and keep her focused because she was always daydreaming. And I had to kind of get her back on track. And she raised her hand and said, Miss Marino, I left my body, and I was above my body, and I was looking down at myself sitting at my desk, because she was having outer body experiences. So I had to be careful on how I said things to the kids, but my kids spiritually were so heightened, and them sharing this with me really made me appreciate them even more, sharing things like that. But I just said, just imagine look down at yourself and imagine you're sitting in your seat, kind of teaching her how to bring herself down, but I had to word it in a certain way. And there were countless stories about what the kids did for me, and how they were little messengers and earth angels for me throughout my journey with going through that whole process with Nick.
Yeah, and they would do that almost every single day,
Every
right?
day.
For the
There
whole
was
year, pretty
the whole
much.
year, everything.
With notes, with what they would say.
The things that they said, even, that same little girl, she said, look at my nails, Miss Marino. And on her nails were little she put ladybug dots.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a sign for me at the time. And so much. There was so much that went on in that classroom, listening to them speak, and it happened over the years too.
Right.
Where they were so connected to the other side, and they have so much value to give teachers.
Right, and this isn't only Lindsay's third grade students that are like this. Every kid is born this way. We were born this way, to where you're born knowing that who you are at the core. You just have an inner knowing with it, and then you lose that knowing over time because society starts to sculpt you and shape you. Like you said, you had to be sensitive about this, about the little girl coming out of her body and all that, and the messages. It's not like you could be straight up with them and say, hey, here's what was happening with you when you drew this picture. You couldn't do that because we live in a society to where this is taboo and this is not normal. It's scary to most people, but once you start to understand it, it's like, oh, it's as normal to us. It's as normal as us sitting here talking to each other. And it's just like, oh, it's just part of reality. And I feel like a lot of the students that you recognized during your time teaching, the ones that were really tapping into their imagination, they started to tap into higher and higher, or more and more senses.
Yes.
So like we're taught we have five senses, but really I believe we have infinite amount of senses that we could really start to tap into by first using our imagination and always exploring that. Because I feel like once you see something, then your body starts to go there and your senses will start to open. And a lot of times the adults stop kids from using their imagination, whether it's saying, hey, you know, you don't have an imaginary friend. That's not true. They don't exist. Quit saying that. And there's always like a negative twist about using your imagination with certain things. Or you're dreaming too big. You could never play professional basketball or professional soccer or whatever it is. A lot of parents, unfortunately, tell their kids that when they start to use their imagination on something that they want to do. So I feel like that's a big part. And have you read your quote yet with Walt Disney?
Thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's blending together, but yeah.
Yeah, because we recorded the first time and it didn't record the voice.
I'm sure.
So,
I'm sure
okay.
I did. I could put it in the description just in case.
But basically Walt Disney that's what he's very big in, is using your imagination.
Yeah, he is. And I feel like with him doing that, sharing all of his wisdom and his inner child has benefited so many adults from remembering that inner child that they have within them. And it shouldn't go away. You know, the kids remind us, whether you're in a grocery store or you're hanging out with your own children or your nieces and nephews or your friends' children, it's important to really figure out what are they wanting to do right now. Do they want to be barefoot outside? Are they wanting to go play on the swing set? What are they wanting to do? Figure out what that is. And if they're coming into your energy field saying different things that they want, it's benefiting you to do those things too. I truly believe that we attract the things that we need to know and hear. And they are like little mini psychics. Like they're giving you readings every day. So listen to them. I remember one situation where we were with our nephews and we were going to find a food place, like a restaurant. We were trying to decide on things. And Tony and I were going back and forth. And Chase, the little one, he's like, he put it so simply, but he's like, why don't you just do it like this and then you'll be happy and you'll be happy? And I'm like, yeah, why didn't we think of that? It was so simple, but it was the way that he said it and he added so much humor to it. So we need to listen to the kids. And we also need to know that this is just a physical shell that we're in right now, our body. Our inner child is still here. It doesn't go away. We just need to tap back into it.
Yeah, and they call it your inner child because that's the last time most people was really tapped into who they are, following their instincts when they were a kid. And so your inner child is really who you are at the core. And we need to always tune into that and figure out what it's telling us to do. Like Lindsay said, a lot of the times the kids around you are telling you what you should do. Like, hey, let's go swimming or let's go do this. And a lot of the times you're going to resist what they're saying because you think, oh, I don't go swimming or I don't do that or we can't do that right now because of this. When in all reality, if you just went and did it, you'll be happy you did it. So, for example, this happened to me, it was either yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. The kids were wanting to swim and I didn't really feel like it. Like I wasn't pulled towards it, but they were saying, let's go swim. And I was like, okay, we're going swimming. And then once I got in, I was excited that I was swimming. So it was really, I needed it. And that's only one example. I feel like this happens all the time, especially with the kids and other intuitive people that are around you. And really, a lot of people that are around you, a lot of the adults are telling you things, they're channeling things too that they don't realize they're channeling to you.
And sometimes adults do channel things. And then other times their own fears come out too.
Yeah.
So with kids, I don't feel like the kids have that same sensor. Like they don't, the belief system that they have isn't.
It's not as much. I would say they, like a lot of kids probably still have it a little bit, but they're young enough to where it's not as clogged yet. So they see a lot clearer to where like someone who's 25, 30, 40, like, and they have those beliefs, it's locked in there already.
Yeah. I'm going to read this quote just in case. So hopefully I didn't read it this round. So too many people grow up. That's the real trouble with the world. Too many people grow up. They forget. They don't remember what it's like to be 12 years old. They patronize, they treat children as inferiors. Well, I won't do that. I think I already talked about this, but at least you could hear this again to think about it again. So Walt Disney is one of those people that supports children and the imagination and having that inner child within them to help them throughout their daily life.
Right, and it's like he said, they're not inferior. They're actually, you can't really call them superior, but you can call them that, actually, because they're more in tune. And I feel like our instinct is, like we said in episode 1 of our podcast, your intuition is your greatest tool. And I feel like it is, because our intuition is like our connection with God, the universe. It's how we speak to all-knowing, or whatever you want to call it. And it's how we speak to like the best decision we can make in each moment. It's telling us. So like the kids are still connected with that, which is great. And this episode is really about helping the listener go back to their childhood as well. Like go back to when they were 12 years old or younger and think about the things like we talk about in this podcast a lot. Think about the things you did when you were younger, 12 years and below, and that you stopped doing for some reason. Or you stopped doing for several reasons, maybe because you don't have any time, or you stopped riding bikes because you think that once you hit 16 or 17 you shouldn't ride bikes anymore. Like think about the things that you naturally were drawn to when you were a kid, and a lot of times hanging out with kids will cause you to automatically think like this,
right? Because
you start to get in tune with their energy, and then if you pay attention enough, you start to tap into another consciousness whenever you're with kids. That creativity, that imagination, spontaneous, if you allow yourself to. Yeah. A lot of times we as adults, we don't allow ourselves to. We think we have to be all strict and firm like an adult. And I do this sometimes too, but most of the time I'm actually like a kid. Lindsay would probably say, right? Most of the time I'm like a big jumbo kid.
But even, it just made me think of coloring books. Like last night we went out to a restaurant and they gave coloring sheets and they gave extra ones and I was coloring. And I feel like now they have the adult coloring books. You know, we shouldn't even have to call it the adult coloring books, but they do. But it's coming back around. You know, more people are saying, you know what, I don't want to sit in a cubicle working. I want to do something else that makes me happy. They're thinking about it, you know, what's part of my purpose. And I feel like children, going back to your childhood days is so important. But I feel like it's important to talk about some signs that your child could be highly intuitive also. And I feel like if your kids are talking about someone that's not there, they could be tapping into the spirit realm. And I'm saying not there, meaning they're saying to you that they're seeing your grandfather that they've never met, or they're seeing an angel, or whatever it may be. Pay attention to those things. Also pay attention to them being extra sensitive, very empathic, and them feeling emotions. All of a sudden they get sad. They don't even know that you were just in an argument with someone, and they tune into that energy.
Yeah, because that causes a lot of issues for them at school.
Right.
Too, like it did for me. It was really hard for me to sit inside of a classroom because it was overwhelming, the energy. And I kind of just used my own way to block it out. But a lot of students, a lot of kids, they don't really have the skills to block it out.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's huge to really look at it, especially if your kid is somebody who does get in trouble a lot in class, whether it's in elementary school or middle school. Well, they're acting out for a reason, and a lot of times, especially elementary and middle, they're acting out because the overstimulation they're getting in the classroom, and they don't know what to do with it, so they have to like tap on the desk or draw or whatever, and then when the teacher says, "Oh no, you can't draw while I'm talking," which is, I think it's a kind of a silly rule, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Then it really causes them to act out even more. So.
And I would let kids chew gum because it's having their brain know that they're doing more than one thing at once. They can stay more focused.
Yeah.
When I need to focus, like even us drinking this coffee, just the idea of knowing we can go to something and, you know, pick up the coffee cup and drink some coffee.
Right, because if it was my choice, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If it was my choice, I would be writing. What were you going to say?
I was going to say I still tap my foot like I do things to move.
She's about to tap me in the head.
I am.
No, I love you.
No. But that's the thing. No, you didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, Tony sitting still like this is not normal for me at all.
Yeah, if it was my choice, we would do this podcast on bicycles. Like Actually, I will, like I said it before, but I will
I
do
know.
one on my bike eventually. Once I'm on Bayshore and I have like 5 miles to ride with no stoplights, that's a perfect spot to do it. But I actually prefer to be riding my bike and talking to somebody,
Yeah.
like, or walking and doing it because it's easier for me. It's just how I work. And a lot of other kids work that way too, to where they need to be moving in order to have an intelligent conversation or a focused conversation.
So this is the thing. While you're listening to this, because we're going to be closing out this episode, pay attention to the children that are around you, whether they're in the grocery store and they say different things in your presence and in your energy field, but also tune into your inner child. What is it that you want? What do you need? Do you need to go swimming? What types of things are you being guided to? Don't forget that it's in there, because it hasn't gone away. Your physical body is just changing. That's it. But you have that within you. And write down the things that the kids are saying. If you're finding that they're singing a song around you, or I know a lot of kids start singing, they are getting messages sometimes from the other side, or they're just in a different space, a different vibration. Pay attention to the words. And also, if you have children of your own, pay attention to what they need from you when it comes to being highly sensitive. All kids end up getting drawn to crystals. If you put them in their presence, they get excited. So I even suggest highly sensitive kids going to the crystal store with their family or whoever it is they're with, and pick out something that speaks to them and have them talk about any spiritual experiences they're feeling, or if they're feeling emotions, where is that coming from? Have them draw it out or write a story about it, but get them talking. This is how they can really, you can help them grow their spiritual gifts instead of closing them down. Because they can always open them back up, but it's better to kind of keep them open and have them grow with them.
Yeah, because it's electricity. It's like electricity, and if they keep them in there, electricity builds up and it's going to become too overwhelming for them. But if they use that gift and they're in an environment that actually helps them bring that gift out more, it's going to be more of a flow for them, and they're going to feel a lot better, and they're going to have more energy. And they're going to be able to sit down and relax more and have conversations. Their ADD, or whatever you want to call it, will actually go away, I believe, as they start to use their energy in the right way that they can. So one thing I would suggest to do before closing out this podcast would be, or this episode would be, to figure out if you have kids, or if you have nephews or nieces, or any kids around you, start playing the sports that they love with them. So if it's softball, say your kid plays softball, go practice with them. If your kid plays soccer, go practice on the soccer field with them, because I feel like the universe is always mirroring us, and like we said earlier in this episode, they're playing a sport because you're probably meant to play it too, because it's going to fulfill you in some way. So for example, like my nephew Mason, he dances now. Like, he's always dancing, and that's always been something I've always wanted to do since, I would say, at least 10th grade, and I really haven't got into it. But now that I'm hanging out with him, it's like forcing me to start dancing more when I'm with him, and he's teaching me different moves.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Or it might not be sports or movement. In that way, it could be something more like painting or arts and crafts or whatever it may be. It could be anything like that.
Right.
So pay attention to these details. They are your teachers. So we're so happy that you're here. Share with us any experiences that you've witnessed as lessons that have come from children, or even if you have children or you're connected to children that you've noticed they've had some sort of heightened spiritual awareness. We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely.
Talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.